Welcome to Flower Juice. My name's John McDonald, and today I'm going to show you how to make a floral circlet or headdress. Now, this is going to feature these lovely cymbidium orchids, and what we want to do is create a headdress that's quite full, and really that the orchids are the thing that are going to stand out. So I've got lovely little cymbidium orchids. We've got some pistache greenery. I've wired a range of different foliages, so we've got some little green ivy leaves, I've got some variegated ivy leaves, and I've got some of the French ruskus. And I've also got a few of the little hypericum berries as well. So we've got a nice range of content, and we're going to show you how to put this together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wire some leaves, and as I say, we've got the ivy leaves, the French ruskus, and obviously we need to wire the orchids as well. So I've actually done all this, but I'm just going to show you how we go about this. So I've got some nice little silver rose wires, which are really fine. So with this vein that's in the back of the leaf, we're just going to go about 2/3 of the way or 3/4 of the way up and put a little stitch in it. And then just pull that down. Now you can use your finger and thumb just to give a little bit of support, and then we can just go round that stem. So basically we've created a stem and this flexibility in the leaf that we can change the way it's wired. So with our leaf here, the French ruskus, we can literally do the same. We can take a stitch in the back, bring it down, and then just round and catch it there. So for the orchid, what we want to do is we want to put a strong support. So I've got a thicker wire and we're just going to feed that up. Now I want that wire to go into this bit here rather than be within the stem. So this is going to give this stem support. And then I'm just going to use the silver wire again just to come through the flower and just a couple of turns. And what that does is that stops the flower from falling off. So this is basically like a stem tex, and this is a flower tape for corsages, and all we're going to do is put that round just to seal that off. So essentially that is giving us the false stem and giving us the colour. So same for the leaf. I'm just going to put it round, roll it a little bit with my finger and thumb, and then so it meets itself. And then this hand is really just putting a little bit of tension on that tape. And then with the other hand, I'm just doing that turn. So roll it around so that you meet itself, and then literally you're just rubbing to give that twist. And this hand is really just holding the tape just to secure it. So what you're wanting is this to be nice and neat, quite fine. You don't want it big and lumpy. So it is worth practicing. So what we've done for our base then is we've got some wires. So I've used these thicker wires. Now they're not, you could use a thicker one, but what I did was I really created like 3 together. So the 3 together is giving us the strength in our band that we're going to create. And then at each end, I've just brought out a single wire. So then I've taped from here down over the 3, which is now really 4, I suppose. And this length for this section is the measurement of a head. So that's important, is actually to measure the person's head. And then these 2 little bits that are thinner at each end, we're going to use just to do the connecting. So we can really do like that. So that's essentially how we're going to make it. But what we need is we need to have this straight wire, and we're just going to work onto the straight wire. So I'm just going to put these out of the way. So we wired our leaves. We wired our orchids, but for some of the other greenery, I've got a little bit of pistache and I've got some hypericum. These have got really nice little stems, and actually I think we don't need to wire them. So straight away we can just tape that on. So just as we taped the individual flowers, we're now going to start just taping things straight onto that band that we created. So it's just a case of, with these materials, lying them down and then taping on. So what I really wanted here was to have quite a nice variety of foliage, and we can pop them in like little sets actually. So we can do a couple of leaves at one time, and we're just going to work our way right down this line basically. So the idea of having the green leaves and then the variegated leaves is just to make it look more natural. If you just tend to have one type of greenery, then it tends to look a little bit odd. Now you might be wondering, why has he got a dirty tablecloth underneath or a dirty napkin? What I did was I've basically soaked that and then wrung it out so that I've got a wet surface. So this surface here is a great thing to work on. Because it's wet, it's good for the foliage. And because it's wet, things don't tend to slip around. So essentially you've got a kind of non-slip top that's good for fresh material. So that's a handy thing to be able to do or to have. Whereas if I was just to work on a shiny worktop, essentially everything's going to be moving around a little bit. So that's a good tip. And actually in the summer, if it's very warm, that's also good for your materials. So like with this pistache, we can take off a couple of little leaves and we can bring it down so it creates like a little bit of a unit. In theory, you should wire everything, but actually in the practicalities of being commercial, you probably won't wire everything. Some of the materials like gypsophila or indeed like this hypericum and that, you can just basically use straight with the stem. It really depends on the material. I mean, if the material's going to be quite strong, then that's the main thing. So as you can see, as we're working along, we're adding in more wires. So this is actually going to make this band a little bit stronger as we go as well. So that's not a bad thing. Now, in the past, people used to twist their wires. You can twist it, but you don't need to. It's really just a case of lying them nice and close to the main stem. So just lying that wire in there and then just tape it on. And we just work our way down here. So using orchids as big as this is a little bit unusual. I mean, I think normally people would probably go for material that's maybe a little bit smaller. So things like spray roses. But the underlying technique of creating a frame or creating a wire and then adding your material in, that's really what this is all about. It doesn't matter what you put here. It's just the same job to do it with different materials. So if I do this with gypsophila and spray roses and bigger roses, we'll just get a different effect. It's not better, it's not right, and it's not wrong. It's just different. So the fact that we're using the orchids, we're going to get a different effect. Now, one thing you'll find as you're making something bigger is that it gets a little bit more difficult to handle, like that. So you'll tend to get a bit of a bend into your wire. And it's because of this weight that we've got up here. Now, a little bit of a bend's not a problem because we're going to have it bent anyway. And actually, when things are getting bent, what you want to do is you want to maybe put things a little bit closer, because when you bend them, they'll then sit apart. Excuse me. And we just work our way down. So actually the wee wires that you've got, or the bits of wire that you've got on your wired pieces, you can also use for helping pull in your non-wired ones. So you can use that to secure. So what I'm doing as well is I'm also using the table as a little bit of a rest. So you can go upside down and hang it below you, that works quite well, or like this, we can just use that table as a support as we work, and that's fine. I think what is quite surprising when you first have to do one of these or are asked to do is just how long you have to make the line of flowers to actually make a circlet. It's amazing how big people's heads are. And I don't mean that badly. And it's amazing actually how similar children's heads are to adults' heads. So sometimes if you've got someone that you work with who's quite petite, you'll probably be able to use their head as a measure if the person has never given you the measurements for their children. And actually, because this is flexible, it is possible to change the size of the circle when you come to put it together. So you can just bring it in a little bit tighter, or you can take it out a little bit. Now at the bit where we join, some people like to do a finish where maybe you're using some ribbon, and it's at that join that's quite a good place to do a ribbon finish. Personally, I don't tend to bother. I think it looks a little bit old-fashioned. It depends on what's going on in the rest of the wedding. If there's not ribbon really featured on the bridal bouquet or bridesmaids bouquets or with the bride, and maybe with the dresses, then it becomes a detail that's not actually anywhere else. So what's the point in putting it on the back? It depends if you want to give the headdress a very defined back. If so, then you can do like what I call a chocolate box bow. We've got a video showing you how to make that type of bow. And it's just like basically a 4-loop bow. So you can make that bow and just leave longer tails on it, and that gives you quite a nice finish for putting in. These little hypericum are just great for this because they've got a nice shape in the actual stem. So as you can see, this takes a wee bit of time, but that's not a bad thing. Good idea if you're doing this is to have some peace and quiet and have the radio on. That works really well. You could have a margarita while you do it, but that's maybe not wise. You might never finish it. The flowers. So as you can see, it's starting to get a little bit of weight in it. So if things are just kind of out of line, because everything's getting moved, you can actually just bend them into position and rotate them into position as well. So like I can go off the edge here and just use gravity. We've got quite a heavy band actually, but this is quite interesting doing this because, as I say, it's not wrong. And actually this kind of bigger, fuller look is becoming really popular again. Years ago it was very popular having big, heavy headdresses. And that kind of went by the wayside, and lately the ones that people have done in the last few years have really been very light. But actually going back to a little bit more volume is quite interesting. But maybe I'm a bit biased because when you're working with plant material, you want to sell plant material. So okay, so we've created a length of flowers attached to the band. So what we really want to do now is just work this round into our ring. So we're just going to bring this round, and this is where your thin wire becomes the point that you can use to attach. So we're just going to work that in. But you want to make sure when you're doing this that actually this is not going to in any way spike anyone in the head. So you want to make sure that this point has been taped. That the tape actually covers the point so that it's not a sharp wire. And even where your wires end up, you can have them so that they end up not sticking into the inside. It can be more on the behind a flower or inside. So really we've got our band now, and because these are all wired, we can just work our way around and just sit it. You know, just have a wee play and just get it to sit. So we're wanting to put a little bit of a turn on so that everything's facing slightly up. And that's it. So this is a simple floral headdress featuring cymbidium orchids, and all we've done is we've used some nice foliage to offset that and to frame the flowers, and also some berries just to add a little bit of contrast of texture. So it's as simple as that. Okay, so our final headdress looks like this. Now, as I say, you can make it so that it's any diameter, so you need to get the right measurement for the head that it's going to go on. So we've got a nice full floral headdress. So really what you're doing is you're creating a wire that's going to be the right length, and then you're just working in your flowers one after the other and building it up. So obviously if we were to use different flowers, we're going to get a different effect. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and please click here to subscribe and keep up to date with all our new videos.